Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a small 4-game NBA slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really does help the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. On this slate, we do have some good plays, though there is a lot of injuries, so let's get into that injury report today. I will be doing FanDuel at the end of the video as well, so stay tuned. Looking at the first game, the Lakers-Boston game, this game does feature 241-point total, which is the highest, but Boston is favored by 11 points. For the Lakers, Davis and LeBron are both questionable, and Reddish and Vincent are out. Boston looks to be at full strength today. For the Indiana-New York game, New York is favored by 3 points. Also has a high total of 236. For the Pacers, Halliburton, Mathurian, Smith, and McConnell are questionable. And for the Knicks, Anobi is questionable, and Grimes is questionable. And then Randall and Robinson is out. Uh, that's obviously going to have some injury ramifications there with all those questionable tags. Looking at the Cleveland-Memphis game, Cleveland is favored by 8 points. This game has the lowest total on the slate at just 215 points. That's almost 25 points lower than any other game on the slate. Looking at the Cavs, Thompson is out. For the Grizzlies, Conchar is questionable. And then Morant, Bain, Smart, Kennard, and Z. Williams are out. And then for Philly and Utah, this game has a 5-point favorite for Utah for 238 total points, which is second best on the slate. For the 76ers, Maxey and Batum are questionable, and Embiid and Melton and Covington are out. Morris is also out for them. And then for Utah, they are at full strength, so we have a lot of positives there. So overall, this slate is interesting. We do have some good plays for you. I have 3 core plays right now, but I do think that'll change as the day goes on, as we have DiVincenzo, Harris, and Josh Hart here. 2 players for the Knicks and 1 for Philly. I think Harris will be there regardless, but the Knicks guys could change a little bit based on the injury situations on both of the Indiana and the Knicks. So let's get into it. So we're going to start with Tobias Harris. He is my favorite player on the slate. He always has big games when Embiid sits out, and since he's out again, he's going to have another opportunity here. His price has actually come up a little bit already, but it hasn't come up as much as it usually does when Embiid is out uh, for a couple games at least. So he's in a solid spot here, and he's in a plus matchup against Utah, who's been kind of iffy defensively. Looking at DiVincenzo for the Knicks, he's really had a big uptick in minutes the last few games with Randall out, and with that situation continuing, he's gonna have a lot of opportunity. This is also an up-tempo game for versus Indiana. Now it is a little bit tougher because Siakam is now there. Indiana is a little bit better defensively, but I still think it's gonna be a high-scoring game, and these 2 guys for the Knicks are definitely great plays, at least at this point. Josh Hart being the other one, he's really had a boost fantasy-wise with Randall out. His price has also come up, but he's definitely worth a look here on the slate. We're going to look at some other options here too. Jalen Brunson is in play for the Knicks. His usage has boosted up as well, though he does have a lower floor than I love. He's still a viable option on this slate and has some good upside, though his price is a little bit high. Looking at Colin Sexton, he has played well lately. He had a couple off games and he has a low floor, but his ceiling has been pretty good lately, so he's definitely worth a look. But I do think this is a challenging matchup, and so it's definitely a little bit riskier than some of the other options. But his price is considerable, just the same, and he definitely has that potential to have a big game here. Kelly Olynyk for the Jazz is an interesting play today as a value play. He has played about 20 minutes most games, and he's managed to have a lot of good fantasy point games, but he's also having a lot of floor games, so he definitely carries some risk today, but he's definitely worth a look. I also like Donovan Mitchell today, though he is fairly expensive and not the greatest matchup, especially in being in the slowdown game. But he's absolutely been fantastic the last 3 games, and those have been a couple of games against tougher opponents. He typically has that, 55 fantasy point upside, so he's definitely worth a look here if you can afford him. Looking at Lauri Markkanen, he had a really good stretch for a while until the last 2 games, and so he kind of fell off against the Knicks in Brooklyn. But if with Embiid out, he should have a lot of opportunity here. Um, his floor is lower than I'd like, but he has a 50 fantasy point ceiling, and that's definitely nice when he's priced under $87,000. Looking at Jaren Jackson Jr., he also has played pretty inconsistent lately, but he has that high ceiling, and he's cheap enough where he needs 41 fantasy points to pay off. He's cheap enough to be a great GPP play on the slate with a potential. Again, the problem there is that the game that he's in is the one slowdown game on the slate. Jason Collins has been pretty good lately. He's had some big ceiling games. His price is right about the max of where I'd want to pay for him based on his minutes and stuff. But he definitely has some good upside here, though he does have a low floor, especially like a lot of guys on Utah does. But this matchup, even though it's typically tougher, it's actually not too bad today. Looking at Jarrett Allen, he actually has some really good opportunity here against Memphis. He's reeling. He had a little bit of off game yesterday because he was uh, had illness, but it looks like he's back to full strength today. He should be a good option to get a double double at very least, as he's been doing that a lot. But he does need 40 fantasy points to pay off, and he's definitely capable of that. I do think his minutes will be in the mid 30s. Again, this game is a slowdown game, so it does cause a little bit of concern, but he's definitely worth a look. Same goes for Vince Williams. He's definitely playing a ton of minutes, and he's had some big games. He obviously has some low games too, as he's a young player, but he definitely has some good potential in this one, and I look for him to have a solid opportunity here, though he was a little bit gimpy after missing. He might be a little gimpy after missing last game with injuries. So I have a couple other value plays just to mention real quick. Scottie Pippen Jr. from Memphis. He's a little bit pricier than I'd like, but he's playing a decent amount of minutes with all the guards hurt for Memphis. He's going to be forced to play a good handful of minutes today. He does need to score in double figures to pay off here, but he's not too expensive, though he's not a must play by any stretch of imagination. Chris Dunn has played pretty well, though there's a logjam at point guard for this team, and he's playing about 15 to 20 minutes a game. He is managing to pay off, though, some games, so he's definitely worth a look, but he definitely has high risk, high reward. Looking at George here for Utah, he's also in the same boat as Chris Dunn. Now, Chris Dunn can play at the small forward position as well, whereas George can't, and his ceiling and floor are lower and higher than Dunn's, but they're the same price. So they are definitely both in play, but definitely carry some risk. Santi Aldama has played well for Memphis in situations, and right now he's getting a lot of minutes. Assuming he continues that, he should have some potential here, though his price is pretty high, and he's probably really hard to roster today. Maybe a GP only play. If all these guys for Indiana are out, then Nesmith will look to have a good minutes game here. He's been playing quite a few minutes the last few games, and his fantasy output has really risen as a result. I do like his potential here with the price point, assuming all these guys get ruled out. Looking at Kessler for Utah, he has played very inconsistent minutes throughout the season. He has a very low floor, but his ceiling is okay, and he's definitely worth a GPP kind of Hail Mary option. So, with that said, guys, that's what I have for DraftKings. Let's move over to FanDuel now. The FanDuel portion will be a little bit shorter. I do have two core plays right now in DiVincenzo and Josh Hart. Again, that could change as we go. So I'm going to look at point guards first. Basically, Tyrese Maxey, if he was to play, he would be a viable option as he's considerably cheaper than I expect him to be here. But if Maxey sits, then Beverly would become a good play here on FanDuel. Jalen Brunson and Sexton for the Jazz both have some upside on this matchup, though I do like Brunson better. Sexton is a little bit pricier on DraftKings or on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. Scottie Pippen Jr. is also a nice value play on for Memphis on FanDuel, but he definitely carries some risk as he's a little bit pricier than FanDuel. Looking at shooting guard, DiVincenzo is obviously a top option here. He's got a good matchup and he's a little bit pricey, but he's a solid option. Jaylen Brown and Donovan Mitchell can both play at shooting guard too, and they both have some potential on the slate. Looking at small forward, I do like Josh Hart a lot, and he is a good play right here, even though he's a little bit more expensive than I'd like. Tobias Harris is also in play here, though he is pricier than on DraftKings, but he's definitely worth a look just because of his high upside. Jason Tatum can also slot in here at small forward or power forward, which definitely has some utility. Looking at the power forward position, Jarrett Allen has some utility here on power forward and center. So does Santi Aldama, but they're both a little bit pricier than I'd like them to be. Looking at the center position, Mohamed Bama has some good value here on FanDuel, where it's a little bit pricey. He's pricier on DraftKings, but he's been in the last four games, been over 19 fantasy points in each one, and with all the injuries to the 76ers, he should get at least that many minutes again, and that should give him some potential. 16 minutes per game the last four games. He should at least get those minutes and have that potential to pay off. And Xavier Tillman can also shoot in there for Memphis as a pretty decent value option. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.